Over the last few months, I've gone from thinking that this quote progressive leftist takeover of the Democratic Party isn't just not working, it's become counterproductive and it's become an obstacle blocking the left from actually gaining power in this country. One reason is that it feeds the insidious nature of the Democrat. It feeds this facade that the Democratic Party is, at least in part, trying to work to improve the lives of regular people in this country, when that is the exact opposite of what the Democratic Party is doing. A majority of this country wants Medicare for all. A majority of the country supports a living wage in this country. Overwhelming majority supports ending the war. Majority supports UBI and direct payments during the crisis. The public largely agrees on big picture issues and policies that they think the government should be doing. Neither of the major parties will agree to do those policies. The leadership of both parties are against these policies. But when you have people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, who pay lip service to those policies and say, oh yeah, I support these policies too, and then you see that they're part of the Democratic Party, a lot of people think, oh, it gives the false impression that this is the view of most of the politicians in the Democratic Party. This is the direction that the Democratic Party, the elected Democrats, are going. And that couldn't be farther from the case. You have these fringe people paying lip service to these policies in the party, but the leadership doesn't support that. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, nobody in his cabinet will support any of these policies. So the people actually crafting policy in the Democratic Party do not support these overwhelmingly popular policies. AOC and Bernie create this facade, this veneer that the Democratic Party is better than it actually is. And if they weren't in the Democratic Party, if they weren't trying to rehabilitate the image of the Democratic Party, then people a long time ago would have had to take a step back and say, hold up, we all want healthcare, we all want UBI, we all want this policy, we all want that policy, but yet neither of the parties support it. And people would have figured out something else. People would have figured out either direct actions only, where people would have gotten behind a third party that actually represents them. People would understand how hostile both parties are to the public. But these quote elected progressives are standing in the way of people coming to that realization, and at the same time they aren't moving the policy makers in the party any closer to those policy positions at all. So they end up just recruiting more people and feeding the machine and getting more people to support a party that is just as hostile to them as the Republican Party, but has but seems nicer and more on your side. And that's why I said that's the insidious factor of the Democratic Party. And then another thing to consider is, all while they're doing this, these elected progressives, it's not that they're changing the party and they're moving the party closer to their policy positions. The party changes them. And it's because just simply being a part of the party, being a member of the party, an elected member of the party, you kind of have to go along with what the Democrats say. You kind of go along and buy into this whole bullshit unity talk, and we all have to come together and we can't be divisive. We can't have all this infighting, or we're helping the Republicans, we're helping Trump. That's the bullshit line that they feed all the elected progressives to get them to fall in line and not buck the party leadership. It really has a remarkable effect on these elected progressives. And it might start slowly, but you realize that as they're trying to fit into the party, as they're trying to go along to get along, as they're trying to not rock the boat at the same time they're pretending to be revolutionaries, doing a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. As they're doing that, they will never actually speak the truth about what the Democratic Party is actually doing. They will never say how corrupt and rotten the Democratic Party is and just how much trouble we're in because of how subservient the party is to their corporate donors. They will never say that. And then if they won't even say the truth about the Democratic Party, if they won't even acknowledge how bad the problem is, then of course they aren't going to even come up with solutions to deal with the problem or to adequately put up a serious fight back to the Democratic Party, because they're just going along to get along. Which brings me to the topic of this video. Jimmy Dore did an interview with Khana over a week ago now, and I haven't seen anybody else talk about it, but this was a very telling interview that he did. And Khana he puts onto display all the problems that I listed just now with this whole takeover of the Democratic Party that the left and progressives are trying to do. He kind of tries to play stupid here and act like the main reason why the Democrats will not get behind Medicare for all isn't because of the just brazen corruption. And honestly, he just sounds and looks so ridiculous and so silly. And again, because he cannot speak the truth and accurately diagnose what the problem is, his solutions are equally as ridiculous, equally as silly, and will not get us anywhere. So even though he's saying he supports Medicare for all, he's also giving us the runaround. And if we listen to Khana and listen to his strategy and follow his lead, we aren't ever going to get it. I have the clip. I'm going to show it to you guys and break it down. But first, you guys already know the deal. I love doing the show for you guys, but it needs to be sustainable. So if you could help contribute to the show, I have a link to the about page of my YouTube channel, to my Patreon account. Also have a link to PayPal right underneath it if you feel more comfortable doing a one-time contribution. So any amount you can contribute to the show greatly helps. And I'm so grateful for all the people who helped out and contributed over the last few weeks and last few months. So again, if you want to help contribute to the show financially, all the links will be in the about page on the YouTube channel. Now, I have the clip. I'm going to show it to you guys, and then I'm going to come back and break it down.
You kind of alluded to it. The real impediment to passing Medicare for all would be Nancy Pelosi's failure to even bring it up for debate or vote in the House. So she won't even won't let Medicare get a debate. She's been a hindrance to all progressive policy, and she's going to be running for re-election for House Speaker. The only challenger currently on the horizon to Nancy Pelosi would be Hakeem Jeffries, who is ostensibly even more corporate than Nancy Pelosi is. So will progressives in Congress just shrug their shoulders and put up a challenger to the White House leadership, or no?
Well, she's going to win. I mean, so it would be tilting at windmill. She has support in the caucus. Now she'll be there. As she said, she's going to be there 2 more years, and progressives are working to make sure we have a progressive successor to her. But a challenge to Nancy Pelosi now would actually lead to someone elected who was more conservative. So yes, we disagree on the Medicare for all, and I've been clear about that. We made progress, though not enough progress. We got a hearing in Energy and Commerce. And I don't understand why we can't have a vote on things. I mean, I understand if people vote against it, fine, that's the democratic process. But to me, not having a vote on these policies is not democratic. And I've been very clear about that. I've shared that view with the speaker. I've shared that view with everyone. I think we ought to have a vote.
And so to me, the reason why there hasn't been a vote is that the People who pull the strings in the United States government are corporate donors and health insurance, Wall Street, and big pharma, and they can't even that's why Joe Biden was their pick and Kamala Harris is their vice presidential pick, was because they knew they were not even going to give lip service to Medicare for all anymore, right? So that's why Nancy Pelosi won't bring up a vote. It's what she should have been doing since she took control of the House, was passing Medicare for all and making Donald Trump and the Republicans squash it. So then you guys can run on this, right? A thing that's very popular. But the control of the donor class is so complete on Nancy Pelosi, she can't even do that. So what leverage do you have, though, the progressives have in Congress to get Nancy Pelosi to do that thing that seems so obvious to everybody else who isn't bought?
Well, it's not just, look, I get your point about the corporate donors, and there's definitely part of that there, because it's not that corporate donors are going to go give money to some campaign. It's not that transparent. It's that they fund the parties, they fund the super PACs, they fund the independent expenditures, and that is a concern. I think having insurance companies put millions of dollars into a Senate race or into a House race or not fund parties, I'm sure that is one of the factors. But it's another factor, which is we have to be bolder in explaining our message. If you could give me two examples. One is on healthcare. They say socialized medicine, and if we just are mealy-mouthed, it's not going to work. What we have to say is, no, look, you get to have your same doctors at hospitals, and now every person's going to be in network. Now, right now, you don't have a choice. There are a lot of doctors that are out of network. Guess what? Under Medicare for All, every single person is going to be in network, and you're not going to pay a dime. No copays, no deductibles, no premiums. And if we don't defend it, if we're just kind of wishy-washy, then we get stuck with the baggage and we don't have an affirmative vision. Same thing with Venezuela, right? I mean, we are so tepid on that. So they say they want Guaido. Well, we ought to say, instead of saying, well, we want Guaido too, or some mealy-mouthed answer, we should say you're crazy. What your policy is going to do is actually going to strengthen Maduro. It's going to give Maduro more reason to yell American intervention, and this is exactly the type of mess that's going to make us less safe. People respect conviction, and I think the problem is we are so afraid to be bold in our ideas that it defaults to people then believing the slogans. But that's just my take.
So let me get to the first bullshit point Ro Khanna tries to make there, which is him trying to rationalize not challenging Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House. And again, this is something I've talked about before. I've done a video about it. There is no good reason to not challenge Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. Absolutely no good reason. She has shit the bed thoroughly through every layer of sheets you can think of, from the comforter all the way down to the fitted sheet. During this entire crisis, she bailed out corporations and did absolutely nothing for the American people. No Medicare for all, no UBI, no rent and debt, mortgage cancellation, none of that. No pause on eviction, none of that. So in this time of crisis, it is irresponsible to not challenge Nancy Pelosi and to not say, okay, she needs to go, because we are sliding into an economic catastrophe that I still cannot find the words to adequately describe how severe this is. And I've been talking about this for 8 months. To let this same person run the House for another 2 years at such a crucial time, it is unconscionable. Win or lose, whether you think she has all the votes or not, you have to at least make the case to the American public that this is unacceptable. And we cannot have a Speaker of the House who doesn't support Medicare for all, UBI, and all those other policies. There was no downsides to challenging Nancy Pelosi. But you see, he makes up some bullshit one as if it's, and states it as if it's fact. Oh, if we challenge Nancy Pelosi, we'll get someone more conservative. We have to wait 2 more years till she resigns from Speaker, and then that's when we'll get the real progressive Speaker of the House. 2 things I say about that. 1, if you get someone more conservative I don't even think you can get someone more conservative than Nancy Pelosi. People have been saying that Hakeem Jeffries is more of a neoliberal corporatist. I feel like that's just one of those things that people say, and everybody just kind of agreed to, but nobody explained. Nancy Pelosi is as bad as it gets. So even if by some weird metric, Hakeem Jeffrey is slightly more conservative, who cares? If you have an opportunity to make the case and do a public pressure campaign and explain why we need a Speaker of the House who supports all of the policies, and you have a opportunity to win, and they did have an opportunity to win because they have the most popular members of the House supporting those policies. AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and of course Bernie Sanders in the Senate. So if they were making the case to the public, hey, we need these policies to be passed, and you need to pressure your representative to back a speaker who supports those policies, they actually would have had a shot. Okay, for the sake of argument, let's say that they lost anyway. If Hakeem Jeffrey is Speaker of the House, if Nancy Pelosi is Speaker of the House, they're going to do the same shitty corporatist policies anyway. So the Ro Khanna acting like he took a big, bold stance and saying, like he did some serious calculation. You're like, you know what? I don't think the American people will be able to make it if Hakeem Jeffries was Speaker of the House over Nancy Pelosi. Oh, come on. You're so full of shit, and you're trying to make it sound like he's more noble and looking out for the people than he really is. The reason why you didn't challenge Nancy Pelosi is because you're all cowards and you're afraid to stand up to Democratic leadership. And all of this bullshit about, oh, not now. They always have some excuse for why they can't put up a fight right now. It's always, oh, you have to wait till after the election. Oh, you have to wait till after the midterms. Oh, Nancy Pelosi said she'll only be Speaker for 2 more years. And then we'll get... No, why don't you actually fight now? People need help right now. 60 million people lost their job, have no income right now. 40 million people are about to be evicted right now. So I'm so sick of all the excuses for why the Democrats, why the leftists, why the progressives are never supposed to fight right now, and why they should just always schedule it for later on down the road at a more convenient time. I'm tired of that. And then after that, Ro Khanna tries to, this really kind of pissed me off. He tries to feign ignorance. And he's like, oh my God, I just can't understand why we can't get a vote for Medicare for all. I just can't understand it. It's a popular policy. Why can't we get a vote for it in the House? You know why Nancy Pelosi and the corporate Democrats won't bring Medicare for all up for a vote on the floor of the House. You know why. If you just look at Open Secrets that tracks all political donations, going back to 1990, the insurance industry has donated over $238 million to the campaigns of Democrats running for office. $230 million in basically legalized bribe. And that's not even factoring in how much the pharmaceutical industry donates to Democrats, who are also, and the pharmaceutical industry is also very much against Medicare for all. And they've donated $185 million to Democrats since 1990. These industries who have a giant conflict of interest and a giant bias on this specific issue of Medicare for all, they don't support universal health care because it would radically cut their profits. A lot of them might even end up going out of business. Again, this isn't even factoring in how much they spend on lobbying, which is even more. The pharmaceutical industry alone spent $240 million on lobbying in 2020. In 1 year, one election cycle, spent $240 million on lobbying. So they're spending ungodly amounts of money to influence politicians and policy. And you really, someone who calls himself a leader of the progressive movement, an elected progressive, somebody who supports Medicare for all, you really are going to pretend like the main obstacle to that being brought up to a floor vote is the fact that all these Democrats who rely on these corporate donations and who benefit from all this lobbying that's being spent to influence them, you're going to pretend like it's not the money that's influencing them. It's not the money that's keeping Nancy Pelosi from bringing Medicare up for a vote on the floor. Either you're too stupid to be doing your job, or you're lying, and I'm leaning heavily towards you're lying. It was definitely Nancy Pelosi who had her top staffers having closed door meetings with lobbyists and executives in the pharmaceutical and health insurance industry. And they were promising them, oh, don't worry, we're never going to bring Medicare for all up for a vote. You're bugging if you think that's going to happen. We will never support Medicare for all. It's not even like I'm taking the most conspiratorial, harebrained explanation for the current state of affairs. This is just a plain-faced reading of what's going on. The Democrats have taken hundreds of millions of dollars from these industries who don't want Medicare for all. You have the leadership of the party meeting with them and assuring them that we'll never support Medicare for all. Why am I supposed to give Nancy Pelosi the benefit of the doubt? Why am I supposed to give her the most charitable interpretation of events and say, don't believe your lying eyes? I know it looks like quid pro quo. I know it looks like transactional politics, but we have to give her the benefit of the doubt. And she's not that corrupt. She's just real stupid, and she can't tell that Medicare for all is actually what's best for the country. And you all saw his answer there. He tries to downplay the influence of all that money, hundreds of millions of dollars, ultimately billions of dollars that these industries are spending to block this specific policy. He tries to downplay that and act like, oh, it's not that Nancy Pelosi is so insanely corrupt and that the Democrats are so insanely corrupt, attached to their hip to their corporate donors. No, that's not it. It's just we need to make our case. We need to make our case better. Okay, so now, if you were on the fence about these elected progressives, if you were still saying, hey man, we can't just turn on them. They're part of the team. They want Medicare for all. We have to stick with them. We have to follow them and help them fight back against the corporate Democrats. If that's what you were thinking, hearing Khana tell you, oh, it's not the money. Oh, it's not the billions of dollars you're spending to influence on this policy. Oh, we need to make our case better. That's code for, I don't know what to say. Let's just keep saying Medicare for all, and then the corporate Democrats are going to listen to us and actually pass it. Really, we have to make the case better. If you think that the reason why the corporate Democrats don't support Medicare for all is because the left needs to make the case better or something that they just don't know the right arguments for it, come on, let's be real. Let's be real. That's a ridiculous point to take. Again, especially considering how much money they're getting paid to not support Medicare for all. And he even tries to extrapolate this to the coup mongering that we've seen from the Democrats in Venezuela, regarding Venezuela. He says that the reason why they supported Juan Guaido is because they're so tepid. Oh, they're so meek and they're so meager. When Republicans say, let's overthrow the Venezuelan government, stage a coup, and install Juan Guaido as this puppet authoritarian dictator in Venezuela, when the Republicans say that the Democrats were so scared and they were so meek, that they were like, okay, yes, I support Juan Guaido too. Really? Is it the fact that they're so weak, or is it the fact that they get paid by the same defense contractors, by the same oil industry, fossil fuel industry, that wants a coup in Venezuela so that we can steal their natural resources? Venezuela has the largest oil reserves on the planet. So you mean to tell me all the people getting money from the people who would benefit the most from a coup in Venezuela, they just happened to fall in line with that position because they were so weak and so scared. Oh, they were so scared of Donald Trump that they couldn't even make an argument against it. So they just said, yes, Juan Guaido. And these are the elected progressives making these dumbass arguments. And I don't know how else to say it, but this is just doing apologetics for rank and brazen corruption. And I'm over it. like I talked about in the video about Joe Biden and all the warmongers and people who do genocide for profit, the people that he's hiring to run his foreign policy. When you mention the clear nefarious motive of people are doing this for financial interests because they want to get some money out of it, you have these apologists like Khana here who would try to tell you, oh, it's not that black and white, it's so nuanced. And yeah, there may be trillions of dollars at stake if we get this policy and if we don't get this policy. But trust me, that isn't the main reason. That isn't the only reason. How about yes? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The money is the reason why the Democrats won't support Medicare for all, even in the middle of a pandemic. And the money is why they're so imperialistic and so ready to do regime change all over the world. It's the money. It's the money. Fuck the nuance. It's black and white. It's the money. And they really do these mental gymnastics to try to flip it on us, to make it look like, oh, we're the naive ones. We don't know how it really works. There's all these different things going into it. It looks very straightforward to me. If you're a politician and you can get millions of dollars to your campaign and then also get millions of dollars to just straight into your pocket, if you do anything that said industry wants you to do, I think they're just going to do whatever that industry wants them to do. And the current state of our politics, it just reinforces that times 1,000. Look at how shitty we've handled this crisis. We've done nothing to actually help the public, to help the people in this country. And again, done absurd, record-breaking bailout for corporations and the rich. Do you think that all the politicians were so stupid that they thought that the CARES Act was the best way to deal with this? No, that's not what it is. They did that because that's where the money was leading. That's where the donors wanted. This is where we are, where progressives are doing apologetics for the corruption in the Democratic Party. They will not actually say the truth about how bad shit is in the Democratic Party. That yes, Nancy Pelosi is going to deny you health care. She will let you go bankrupt and she will let you die because her and her party are getting money to do so. It sounds grim and it sounds dark. It sounds nefarious, but that's what the situation is. And these so-called leaders of the left, these elected progressives, not only do they not have an effective strategy to combat that and actually use direct action and public pressure campaigns to try to force the hand of these corrupt politicians to do policies that are in the best interest of the country. Not only will they not do that, they won't even acknowledge the depths of the corruption. So what is the point of having them? What is the point of supporting them? All they're doing now is sheepdogging people into the Democratic Party and then having us chase our tails and giving us bullshit strategies like, oh, no. Don't worry about the money. It's not the money that's making Nancy Pelosi block Medicare for all. What you really need to do is just make a better argument for it. You got to make a better argument for it. And then people on Twitter, lefties on Twitter, will keep adding Nancy Pelosi and adding Joe Biden. Hey, can you please do Medicare for all? That ain't going to make a difference. Khana knows it's not going to make a difference, but he'll tell you to do it so you can get off his ass and stop pressuring him to make him actually do something, make him actually do his job and force these policies for a vote. So